Hey everyone, the camera is there. I got this. Hi everybody, thanks for coming. It's so nice to see people live and in person. This is the first event I've done live in person in a very long time, so it's really great to see you. And thank you all for coming for the pizza, which will be later. But of course, we're here to hear from these fabulous people. I'm Katie Shanahan-Linder. I'm the Executive Director of the Center for European Studies and also a Euro major. And on behalf of my friend and colleague, Zach Ward, Student Services Manager at the Clinical Studies, we want to welcome you to the 6th Annual Global Career Night. I know it's nice to be persevered on Zoom, and we are thrilled to be back in person. I'm going to start by introducing our senior associate team. We call it Mansfeld, with whom we do a lot of really exciting activities related to everything global, and without the support we would be lost. So thank you for being here, and give us some welcome.
Thank you, Katie. Yes, it is great to see all of you. It's great to have a mic that allows me to do a mask off. This is like a magic wand. So Katie has invited me again to start off Global Career Night. So I think okay, Global Careers. In February of 1988, I was interviewing to be a salesman for a soap company on the edge of Vienna in Austria. And never has a boy been less prepared to do an interview than I was in that moment. And that was not the start of a global career, but it was the start of the awareness that people actually get prepared to go and get global careers. So from that moment I did, because I was living with family. My father's older brother lives in Austria. And so I was living with family, so I kept looking for a job. I finally found a job as a market researcher for an industrial property brokerage firm that was based in the United States that was trying to understand markets in German-speaking Europe. So they bought me a Euro pass, and they would pay for me to stay in the second from worst hotel in any city in German-speaking Europe. So I traveled around Switzerland, Austria, and Germany, and I would pull into train stations, and I would flip open the yellow pages, which were in every train station, and I would call every single industrial property broker in the city, and I would get appointments with about 2/3 of them. Why? I don't know. And then I would ask them about their business, and I would find them, so then I would go along my merry way. So I had that career. I'm now a cultural anthropologist who works in the Ecuadorian Andes, so none of this had anything to do with where I had wound up in life. But they were me taking shots at trying to get a global career. And I realized none of this would be useful or helpful for you to hear. So I actually went into my recommendation letters to see how I support my students when they are applying for careers. And what is striking to me when I read these students and what they're trying to do is how diverse the pathways are to global careers. And I'll share just 4 of them. And some of these are predictable. Wishy Sen went to the Peace Corps. Then also, I think this is predictable, Jordan Treacle followed his girlfriend to Rome and then somehow got a job at the Food and Agricultural Organization. And he was very qualified for the job because he founded the Fair World Organic Food Group on this campus and began the auditing of our dining services purchases of local food. And this qualified for him to work in Rome for the Food and Agriculture Organization. The relationship with his girlfriend didn't last, but he stayed and he went on and he got a master's degree in rural development. Kurt Davies, another student, went on to become an advisor in the study abroad program at the University of New York and also worked on international exchanges. And Kelly McKay, another student of mine, graduated, went to Washington, D.C., in a job she did not really like to want to do as a policy analyst at a nonprofit organization. And she got there and she just applied and applied and applied. And she said after her first full year was completed, then 3 different places called her back. It just took her to cross over that first year threshold in her policy job. And then that led to some positions she held in Asia, running programs for U.S. organizations. And then I saw that I was writing letters for her, which she defined global public health workers. So from Austrian sub-package, which is the hard way to go, to working your way up through DC jobs, there are lots of hats. And hopefully the panelists tonight have a little bit more linear, better way to go about it. But it's great to be here. It's great to draw into some.
Thank you, Ruby. We'll be interested to hear more about that story. So I want to also say thank you to Zach and I couldn't put this event on without friends and colleagues. Tonight's event is, of course, co-sponsored by the UNC College of Arts and Sciences. The African Studies Center, right? So all the area study centers are on the third floor. So if you're interested in SCS, a lot of things to offer. The Carolina Nation Center, Kevin 5 is here in the house. Please go talk to him about anything that to do with Asia and scholarships and Phillips ambassadors and all sorts of exciting things. The Translate Masters program, you'll hear a little bit more about tonight. Sarah Hutchison is here, so please ask if you're doing a master's program in the US and Europe. The Center for Middle East and Islamic Studies, also on the third floor. Center for Slavic, Croatian, and East European Studies, also on the third floor. The Institute for the Study of the Americas, as well as the curriculum for Latin American Studies. So if something you want to major in, you sure can. And of course, the UNC Russian flagship program, very exciting. New program from the defense to take you to Kazakhstan, for example. So lots of exciting things happening in this building, as you know. And then all over campus, exciting global things are happening. And we're going to provide you some information about our colleagues and programs. For example, well, you always know career services is there to help with all sorts of things. Honors Carolina and broad, of course, in the second floor. But also distinct scholarships. The Peace Corps, we have a Peace Corps Brad, who works here and in career services, and lots of course, Peace Corps alumni at UNC. Phillips ambassadors we just talked about. We have a diplomat in residence, we also have a diplomat listening us everything. The Latino Migration Project, for example, the XY, and really the list goes on. So there's so many global things happening on campus, and we'll support you in your goals, endeavors, on campus, and we really encourage you to talk to them. So tonight we're talking about global careers, and as Robbie mentioned, there are not always linear, more like a jungle gym as opposed to a slide, but that's kind of what's exciting. And we're going to hear some great stories this evening, and we really want to encourage you to think about a global career in lots of different ways. The global career you have it right here at Chapel Hill, just you have to move anywhere. The people you work with, the kind of work that you do, the kinds of things you're supporting, that's to make it global. You can move across the world and stay there forever, and that can be your global career, but you can also do lots of different kinds of things. And I think it's exciting to think about what you can do in certain phases of your life. And what is really critical is to find people who are willing to talk to you about their experiences, folks, who I mentioned across campus, who will help you along the way, because there's nothing wrong with asking questions and hearing those honest accounts, because, you know, everyone sees social media, everything looks really great and glossy, and that's not reality. So go out and ask, and tonight ask a whole bunch of questions of our panelists folks, and get some honest answers, and then come eat some pizza and ask some more questions. Okay, okay, great. So I have the pleasure to introduce our panelists who are here tonight, and start with Carlin Cohen, who is on the screen. There they are. Hello, good evening.
Hello, everyone.
Great to see you. So Carlin is an advocate, okay, just this first line, right? Carlin is an advocate, activist, Filipinx American, dedicated to building social, racial, and economic justice through radical systemic change. I think this is a person we all need to know. Really, extremely impressive. As the Chief Policy and Public Affairs Officer of the Chinese American Planning Council, the nation's largest Asian American social services organization, they oversee public policy, advocacy, government affairs, and community engagement. Previously, Carlin worked at FBWA, an economic equity nonprofit, the New York City Mayor's Office of Contract Services, and consultant for the UN Development Program at Oxfam International, among other things. She also organizes with Jews for Racial and Economic Justice, where she serves on the steering committee of the Jewish Vote, originally from North Carolina. They graduated from UNC Chapel Hill with a double bachelor's in international studies and philosophy, and got a master's from the Columbia University School of International Affairs. Thank you so much for being here online tonight. We wish you were here in person, but we know you'll come back. So, next we have Robbie Gonzalez, here in the middle. Robbie joined the U.S. Foreign Service in 2002. He's posted at the Foreign Service Institute currently, where he teaches trade craft skills to new Foreign Service political and economic officers. From 2016 to 2018, Robbie was Deputy Director of the State Department's Office of Security and Human Rights. His other assignments include political military officer in Israel, policy and operations officer at the U.S. mission to NATO in Brussels, political officer in Liberia, Ukraine desk officer in Washington, D.C., consular officer in France, where he met his wife, and political officer in Hawaii. Robbie's first posting was political economic officer in Cameroon, right, where he also covered equatorial Guinea. Robbie is a member of the second transatlantic master class, right after me, and we realized that we have not seen each other since 2000 in Berlin. I know, before we were all born. Anyway, it's great to see you again, Robbie. And last but certainly not least, Davies is a writer. This is great. Writer, creative technologist, and futurist from Atlanta, Georgia. Known for his award-nominated fantasy comic book series Sorghum and Spear, Davies created a fantasy saga featuring African folklore and history to highlight the world of the warrior family. Davies uses graphic novels, animation, and augmented reality to build inclusive storytelling. A serial entrepreneur, Davies' most recent startup is called Subsume, a technology platform that connects K-12 students to creative and tech careers through project-based learning. Really, I cannot think of a more wonderful group of people to talk to this evening. Thank you, Zach. Thank you to the three of you for being here. Thank you for being here. Please ask questions. Thank you.
Thanks so much, David. Can everybody hear me? Everybody be sure? Yeah, I can hear myself. Cool. Thanks so much for attending. 6 years, wow, that's crazy. It's always a robust conversation. We always envision that this is an opportunity to bring back such dynamic alumni, just to have a very candid conversation. We really want to get down to the truth about your pathways, trajectories, your feedback, suggestions for these students based on your story backgrounds and kind of where you're at in your life. So thank you so much. Thank you, Harlan. And thank you for being here and participating. I guess the first question I want to ask, and maybe I'll start with Harlan, if that's okay. What made a globally oriented education initially attractive to you?
Yeah, thank you so much. And thank you everyone for bearing with me while we all navigate this hybrid world together. I wish I could be there with those of you who are in person, but really glad to be in the space with all of you tonight. I think for me, what made me interested in a globally oriented education was simply that I was really curious about how public policy locally and globally impacted each other. And for me, it was really honestly coming to UNC and seeing the International Studies program and how I could learn about everything from domestic policy to international relations and everything in between, and really explore how they were connected was what made me curious. I'm also lucky that I have family across the world, particularly in the Philippines, and that really started that curiosity from a young age, trying to understand how international policy, really from the global South to the United Nations was a part of all of that. And I think that even though I ended up really in a domestically focused career, which we'll go into more later, that was kind of the initial thing. And then coming to UNC really built that curiosity for me.
Thanks so much. Senator Robbie.
Thanks so very much. And I think for me, the opportunity of being a global studies student here at Chapel Hill maybe a bit of the inverse of Carlin's response, because for me, I live in Eastern North Carolina, small town called Snowville. The sound of this auditorium actually was more big than people when I grew up. So the idea of seeing a space and place that was larger than the world that I could see, where a lot of my family was all down the street. And so a lot of my education, all my experiences were very insular. Though a great upbringing, I think that I had come here to Chapel Hill and understanding that my story and culture was a part of a larger intersection of the world, and that I could take that and learn more about what was like among us, even though I was learning language and learning of other spaces and opportunities that maybe some felt inviting and some felt like new adventures I could take on. I knew coming to Chapel Hill and having a local perspective of how not only I wanted to work, but also where I wanted to live and how I wanted to be represented, provided a fantastic space that allowed me to grow and develop, and still to this day allows me to be innovative in the places I want to be, and to seem to be a nice invitation to continue learning and developing.
Hi everyone, it's so great to be here tonight. I think Carmen mentioned curiosity, and that is really what root is the root of interest. I grew up in small town Texas, and just to see it's kind of a reserved place, and I just want to really get out and see the world and see what goes on to understand the environment. And also, I was looking for a sense of adventure. There's just so much of a life just learn. You can do so much of it. When I did, you really have to travel to it. The great thing about this age is that internet and technology has really so you don't have to do it necessarily. We can do it. I think that's what I used to it. And the reason I should make particular prayers because I didn't just want to visit places, I really wanted to go. Transcendental Master Research, actually, such a great program. Multiple verses, see the cultures, that really do.
I think the next question I have, and speaking for a lot of our goals as a mentor, for one of the members partner and in front of this audience, how did you get into your specific career? And maybe more important, the second part is, why do you stay? And maybe different if we could start with you here a bit of that. Absolutely.
I know me getting to the space run that was absolutely dumb luck. There's the idea of following passion and the things that I was going to do, whether I got paid or not, which was building an animation, video games. Then the idea of having a global sense of what connected, which always felt like things like popular culture, like anime and gaming were languages, were ways that transcended traditional ways that we connected. The idea of now we'll call metaverse, a lot of Web3 technology was just a simple sense of being in a lot of spaces and having a lot of experiences outside my comfort zone, some abroad, being able to work for, working in automotive space, where for my career was my first intersections of working internationally, as well as when I studied abroad experience, seeing that firsthand, being able to witness that a lot of us are doing the same things, and finding our spaces online together, building communities that way. A lot of ways transcended a lot of the language and kind of geopolitical barriers, and now kind of coming into where my creative career now has a technology push to bring all that together. That's how a lot of the things kind of formed around what my company does now, which is trying to make the language of technology more equitable and more translate across these cultures. And but now I feel like I've been able to have a good sense of, what makes communities known and unique, but also makes them succinct and valuable in telling stories and sharing, what's great about us with each other. And so for me, it feels like this career that I have now really kind of formed around me. But being able to see myself in different spaces, both in travel, but also in culturally, contrast with a lot of the Columbia Chapel Hill, really prepared me for when things were ready to change, that we kind of predict and be influential, try to be a part of the change we do.
Robbie?
To get into the point of research, take a competitive exam, so that's my thing, so. But, you have to kind of show the pathway to prepare you for that, I'd say. So, when I was an undergraduate, I took an undergraduate to house, and there was a diplomatic residence there. And I knew I was a political science, history major, and I knew I wanted to do something in information and travel, cultures. I was very interested in foreign languages. So, one day I went to a session of this, in South Africa, foreign service, and it's a great opportunity to both live abroad and serve your country in the United States. So that kind of became my goal from my sophomore year. Confidence that I wanted to do. And, so what I did was try to do a little bit of postgrads. I actually studied master's work there's questions now. Some experience in Israel, human city affairs, and I wish that master's program. Because that's a great program because it gives you the opportunity to get the new study and policies across Europe, which is a really, really good experience. Along the way, whenever I was in the United States, I tried to cultivate relationships. There was so many Americans out there to reach out to them. So I took the exam in Berlin. Being good at taking this particular exam, just back then it says that people are able to remove facts from where the economists are really able to succeed at it. Why do I say it is a very rewarding career? A lot of people look badly at government in Washington for problems. I like to think that I can play a role in Washington as the agents change. It feels nice to be part of something bigger in this world and trying to advance that interest on. It's very important. Sorry. Helping to build those connections with other interviews and help them understand the United States and how we do what we do and what it's not going.
Carl, I think now we've got an option for you to respond. Carl, yes.
Awesome. And I understood that maybe folks could not hear me so well last time. So before I launch into it, I'm wondering if this is any better.
We can hear you fine on our end. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. So I think honestly, what kind of drew me into my specific career was a series of accidents. When I graduated UNC, I was really sure that I wanted to go into international development, and I wanted to go into grad school for that. In the intervening time before I went to grad school, I spent some time working at a local organization called the Southern Coalition for Social Justice, where we were doing a lot of organizing around a local law that at the time had passed that was really hurting immigrants in the Raleigh-Durham area. And I think that's when I got my my first taste for the power of local organizing. But I was really determined to have an international career. And so I went to grad school for international relations. I moved up to New York, where I still am because I fell in love with the city and decided to stay. And I had a really great grad school education where I was lucky enough to travel. I got to study with some incredible professors. And after grad school, I began doing consulting projects. I worked with Oxfam International on a research project that they were doing in Ethiopia. I worked with the United Nations Development Project on a project that they were doing in Zambia and in the Republic of Georgia. And those were all really great experiences that I had. I was mostly working on the research side of things, which I really loved. But at the same time, I was in New York City and was seeing everything that was going on right in my own city at the same time as I was spending all of my focus on places that were far, far away that I wasn't even living in. And that kind of kept my passion growing for working on domestic public policy. I should also add that throughout all of this, from being at UNC to past graduate school, I was working in the restaurant industry as a server, as a bartender, which is, often what people need to do to get through college and grad school. And I will say to this day that I learned more valuable skills in the restaurant industry than almost anywhere else. And so I then ended up in an internship that was doing similar research to what I was doing on the international scale, but looking at really local city-based policy work and studying poverty at the city level. And that landed me then at the mayor's office, where I continued doing research. And I learned that, while city government work is incredibly important, at least for me, it wasn't the right fit. And then I landed at the organization that I'm at now, where I get to do a combination of public policy work, working mostly on city, state, and federal policies that impact immigrants. And that can be everything from how we fund legal services to the federal public charge rule that was happening over the last few years to statewide laws and policies. But I also do organizing with communities that don't typically have access to decision makers, elected officials, government officials, et cetera. And I really get to work to help them actually influence those decision makers directly. And I think that's really what keeps me in the work, is every time I work with a young person that says, wait, I can call my elected officials and demand that they pass this bill because it's their job to represent me, that keeps me in the work. Getting to work on public policies that I know are going to impact myself and my neighbors. I'm working on a bill right now that I'm hoping will pass this session. That would be like my first bill that I've passed at the state level. So all of that's what keeps me in the work, is like the passion for what I'm doing that I hope can help my neighbors.
That's really wonderful. Thank you so much, Carla, and for your candid answers. The next question I have, what kind of skills or competencies do you find most crucial in your work, and maybe get into the differentiation between kind of the soft and hard skills? I think so often our students are so focused on quote unquote hard skills, they devalue the soft skills that I think are so crucial in so many different industries and careers. So if we could kind of get into that question. Maybe Robbie from the started.
Yeah, for me, to be successful, I would say the same three ones. Really good interpersonal skills and being able to be effective in reaching people and understanding and listening to them. Really good cooking skills, being able to explain details in a short and succinct way that clearly communicates the necessary information. You just cannot, you have to be able to do this quickly in my career. And the most important thing that you have to do is have really, really excellent writing skills. This is something I feel sometimes our secondary education system, as I mentioned earlier, is not really promoting enough. You really need to be able to do research, distill information, and be able to create a cohesive argument that is persuasive. Or if you're predicting a subject, you need to be able to bottom line up front. We take this in the military, and then be able to lay out the reasons that the situation is the way it is.
Yeah, I think some of those, obviously, I think those skills are, as we're talking about soft skills, absolutely valuable and viable. I think for me, the first thing is empathy. The idea of trying to understand people where they are, not necessarily how I translate their culture, their experiences, or the opportunities I would present to them. I kind of look at people as people. That's be altruistic as you can, and whether that's sales or whether that's service. I think that's been a great opportunity to bridge more authentic relationships. I think the other thing is listening. Everything doesn't have a literal translation. Everything's not by the book. People are unique. And the more that you understand that uniqueness and where they come from, again, another way to build and foster authentic relationships. And again, just to learn, right? I think if you're always giving out information or trying to be the point or the source of data or value, that you miss a crucial way for yourself to grow, develop, and bring in and be a more valuable asset, whether that asset is a consultant as I do, or just as a lifelong learner that I hope to be. And I think the third thing, if I can think, would be a sense of gratitude. I think particularly as we come from, we're all here for a very prestigious university, known around the world. And the good thing is that we have a lot of advantages that right now we take advantage of. I think being able to understand and appreciate people, not for what they don't have, but I think the idea of being considerate that people give you their time and of their talents, and realizing that human experience really translates well in our global sense of self. Because we all want to be global citizens, want to see a world and an environment that we're all accepted and appreciated, whether that's through how we are going to live our technological lives forward, or just as, again, where we want to be appreciated just as humans in our sense of self. I think those three values of what we try to bring and try to educate and empower people through technology is that we try to leverage those as best we can. And again, the key word is fostering authentic relationships.
Completely echo everything that the others have said already. I think for me, the thing that I really learned is that the hard skills were skills I could learn on the job. I didn't know how to analyze a state budget or a city budget before I started my current job, but I learned how to do that. The soft skills are the ones that I felt like were really important to build, and I had to build over the course of my career. And for me, the key ones have been communication and building relationships. So, if I have 45 seconds with an elected official and I have to get them to understand why I want them to sign on to a bill that I think is important, I need to be able to communicate that concisely to them. And it helps if I've built a positive relationship so that I can have that conversation from a good place. If I'm working with a community member that's walked through the doors of our social services agency and they're upset because they don't qualify for Medicaid or SNAP because of their immigration status, I need to be able to have the conversation with them to point out why it's actually state laws and state funding or city laws and city funding that is creating that, and how we can actually work together to change those things. And understanding that communication and that relationship building is different for different audiences. If I'm working with partner organizations trying to build our coalition to pass a bill or pass a budget, if I'm working to build relationships with elected or government officials, or if I'm working to build relationships with community members, it's all a different audience. It's really understanding the issues that I'm working on in a way that I can communicate it to those different audiences and connect with those different audiences. Because really, to me, the connection and the relationships is the key to being successful. And that's why I think that those skills are so critical.
That's really wonderful feedback from you all. I think one of the things that if there's a common theme amongst global studies and other study centers across this campus, it's the value of the social capital that's cultivated on this campus, the peers, the staff, the faculty members. It really does feel singular, and that can transform your life going forward and be such a valuable kind of proposition to carry on to a whole different variety of fields and career paths. So that's really wonderful feedback from everyone. The next question I have is what's one piece of practical advice you give anyone starting out, regardless of kind of career or path they may be considering? What's something that if you look back at your life and your journey, you wish you could have told yourself upon leaving college, upon starting your professional career? Maybe you want to start with Carmen on this one?
Yeah, I think if I can cheat and offer two, I think I would have told my I think I would have really told my former self that I am building skills that I'll use in my career no matter what I'm doing. And it's just a matter of really understanding how those skills transfer. I think oftentimes we think of our skills as so narrow that we don't actually see that we're really building skills that we use throughout our career, whether it's working in a restaurant, whether it is an internship, whether it's a job that isn't seemingly on my career path or your career path. I think that really just thinking through how we're actually constantly building our own skills, building our own knowledge, and that can be used to serve us throughout our careers. The other thing that I would say is reach out to people and ask for a conversation. Whether it's someone that you just met, y'all should all be reaching out to me and the other panelists to have conversations about your careers. Whether it's someone you don't know and it's a cold ask and you just say, hey, I had a question or wanted to pick your brain about this or could use your advice about this. That has really served me well, even though it's been something that sometimes I've been scared to do. And I think that it can really, really help towards your career goals.
I'll let it use that cheat code and get to, and my apologies to all of the investors and everything, but my first thing I would tell myself is GPAs don't matter, right? They matter as in you need to get a job to qualify at this point, but thankfully, nobody asked me what my GPA is at UNC 10 years later, right? So this is my 10th year, graduation, and being able to come back, be part of this program, this project. It matters so much when I'm sitting on the other side of the seat. But I think the idea of the soft skills that we talked about are like the professors that I get a chance to come back and talk to now. Also the people that I really forge good long-term relationship with, or my peers and other students. That's how I got ahead. Right, the idea that we all came from a very prestigious university, we have a beautiful shared community, and we all remember how we came up together. We commiserate on a lot of things from the old days. I think now looking at what made us strong was that we finished things, and that we had the skills to learn and be able to be humble enough that we knew we didn't know everything. But when we got into spaces that we were, called upon to do things that we answered the call. And that's what your employers, future employers will look for. And as you become business owners and leaders of the world, that's where people will look for you for that type of leadership. So, yeah, you should still go to school, do all the things you're supposed to do, right? But the idea is that on the other side of this, that your success will be measured by your actions and ways to impact the world. The second thing is that, kind of alluded to, that it is who you know, right? You want to understand and appreciate the people around you, not for what they can do, but what you can do for them. Being a value add and being someone that people want a long-term relationship with, whether it's personal or professional, as you go through this journey of building a career, and again, being the leaders of tomorrow, these are the people that 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago, right? I think it's 20 years since you folks have connected, but look how these relationships come back and flourish and bear such beautiful fruit. So just those two things, I feel like if I knew then what I knew now, I'd be more cognizant of being a value add to people around me. And again, not sweating the small stuff without being, the top person in my class. And I'll leave with this last thing. I was the global studies, Asian studies, and econ minor. By far, I had got to have been the worst Japanese student to ever march across the stage. And I say this because just now giving the chance, I talked to Sensei. I went to visit her, as part of my return period. And she has a picture that we took on my first study abroad, hanging up in the office. And so we had seen each other since then, and it was a beautiful sentiment. But I say this to say, she hung my picture up and she tells every student he never got A in his class, but he worked the hardest because he saw on the other side of this everything that he wanted. And I felt like that's the kind of legacy that if you can leave that with people when you go to school, the people that you work with in your social and personal lives, that's what people will remember, and that's what people will absolutely come back for next year.
This has been some great advice that I've heard from you too, especially just with small stuff. I'm worried about perfection because we want to get caught in that. You'll get to your goal, we have the career you want, be well, and then yourself really, really hard at it. And what I tell students that I teach for this next trade crafting of themselves is as you're climbing up that mountain, as you're climbing the pyramid, take a moment, take a breath, enjoy the view, because it's not really about that in game, especially in the foreign service office. Since we have an background system, we're so worried about promotion, performance over the years. But I had to start telling myself, because I was getting burnt out, people suffer from burnout, that I got into this not for the promotion, but for the experience. So remember why you got into the job you did as you do it. And I think it's important as secondary to throughout your career take time, even now as you're studying as you do, just stop, reflect, and think, am I doing the right thing that is for me right now? Should I do it later? Am I trying hard enough? Should I try harder? Reflect on these things because you just can suddenly find yourself in a career just running. It's, you did a great job and enjoying it. It's just kind of on hamster wheel. And it's really important to have that stopping point and think, am I enjoying this? Am I doing it well? And am I being the best person I can be? And then as you do things like you have significant others and children, you just say, am I doing my best self for them? So these are the things that I would encourage myself to keep in mind because things change, life happens, and life will not go to plan. So be prepared for this.
Really segues incredibly well to my next and last question before we go to Q&A. I think this was a salient issue before COVID, but I think it's become more salient for me personally, for probably most of us, and for our students. Can you talk about, in terms of where you're at now in your careers, work-life balance, and maybe any sense of evolution, whether that's during the COVID times or just in terms of career progression? Can you talk about what that looks like for you, the value that you place on that, how you kind of navigate that in your professional lives? And Carla, if we want to start with you.
I think it's a great question to ask, particularly during COVID times when somehow everything just seems to bleed together. It's, to be honest, something that I'm really working on and something that I've really struggled with. And I think the thing that I'm trying to learn or maybe remind myself is that if I just spend all of my time working, number one, I'm not maintaining that curiosity that kind of brought me to this work to begin with. I'm not doing anything to feed that. And that if I work all the time and I burn myself out at some point, that I'm not actually going to be of any use to the movement. So I've been working intentionally to try to carve out time for other interests, for learning on my own time that's not just for work, for organizing outside of work, and then just for having fun and taking care of myself, doing things that I enjoy. And I think that it can be really hard to do that, especially like when careers are demanding, but physically carving out time in my calendar to do it helps, and reminding myself of why it matters helps. And I welcome everybody else's advice because it's certainly something that I am continuing to work and learn on.
Definitely the work and life balance space was already hard to start with. Like I said earlier, once you're in your career, you're really going to achieve your hopes and dreams. The good, maybe the good and the opportunity is you're going to get exactly what you want, right? You're going to get that job, you're going to get that space, you're going to lose that city, and then the idea is you'll get it, but what does it take to keep it? And a lot of times that's the hard part of life, right? Relationships, families, these things transition to growth. Now that's when the cost of time and energy really come to bear. For me, really in the pandemic especially, it's hard to turn that off, right? I feel like I'm always at work because I have a phone, because I have a computer, because I'm in front of an electronic device that's telling me you should be doing something else right now. And being able to try in my mind to set those boundaries, if nothing else, to get rest and know that like my health is like the commodity now, right? That all these things should be making it easier for me to rest, easier for me to find balance, but it is a shift, right? Because now when you have the opportunity to work from anywhere or travel anywhere, the idea is that you're always on stage. And so you have to give yourself those breaks if that is just absolutely moving away from the space or again, just really getting the rest and time that you can. But I think part of it is also appreciating those smaller moments that they just said, right? This idea of time with friends and family, especially in the pandemic where that thing has really become more commodified, more value, things that we take for granted. Even as we transition to whatever I want to be, I think just being understanding that if anything else, that your health and your sense of being are the things that you have to make sure that you restore or replenish, whether that's with having the right people around you or a support system, or again, just making sure as healthy as you can possibly be is really that key. Because those are the things you cannot get back once you're gone, the time and your health, right? So you want to make sure that those are commodities that you restore and take most care of, that the career and those other parts, whether that's the education to get that career or being in that career, can always work around it. It's hard to get back to those other parts.
Work-life balance. In my first days, there were certain people who were able to take and will call you at 9 o'clock at night and ask a question. And it's the two parts to meeting this challenge. One, you have to create boundaries. And don't be afraid to create boundaries, especially if you work in a company with a lot of people. Yes, we have to be accountable and supportive of our colleagues, but in general, we're all needs to, there are no exceptions, one's so it's important when you go to a challenge to establish what the boundaries are. You want to go in and say I'm going to do the job, be there to do the job, not necessarily, but slowly you do want to build up those boundaries so people know that there is a separate space between work and home. And then both kind of in the home space and the workspace, I think you need to create hard lines for yourselves. We talk about the wall space, especially because there's so much burnout, resilience. Some people to create resilience toolkits because you're not always going to be the one who's take care of you. You're gonna have to do a lot of that for yourself. So it's important to have hard lines to do things that you like. I like doing other things besides foreign affairs. I like going for a run. I like going on hikes. I like to an art museum. I like taking my kids to the playground. I like sometimes on my phone. And my kids in the jump, I'm going to do that, but I carve out that space for me because I know effective as a parent or an employee or as a human being if I'm willing to take that time off myself and rest and prevent burnout because I have really skated on the edge of burnout before and it's not a lot of fun. So do what you can to prevent that because you're probably going to be a happier person and you're going to be less needy, so it'll make it easier for you to be able. Thank you so much.